Hey now, we are getting over, and I am the Silver King, Adam Silverstein, here to lead you through these hard times. Dada, with your 2025 AEW Full Gear Instant Analysis. That's right, Getting Over is back once again, and the Silver King is here, granted about 12 hours removed from AEW Full Gear, but still here to break down everything that happened on the brand's penultimate pay-per-view of 2025. We have an absolute ton to get to on the show, so let's not waste any time off the top. Allow the Silver King to remind you that the Getting Over Wrestling podcast
is all about Defy.
So head over to Apple Podcasts and Spotify. Leave a 5-star rating on Apple. Take a little extra time. Leave a 5-star written review. If you do, we will read it live right here on the show. Don't forget to follow us on social media at Getting Overcast for episode drops, news, analysis, highlights. You can send in questions and comments for the show and vote in pre and post-show polls, which factor into our final grades here on the instant analysis. You will hear the results of both of those polls along with the Silver King's grades as this show concludes. So we're going to break down the entirety of AEW Full Gear. We're going to go match by match as always with our analysis, give you the results, an overall grade on the match. Of course, we'll give you one at the end of the show as well. And just being frank with you, given this is an NFL Sunday and Silver King had to watch the second half of Full Gear early Sunday morning, woke my ass up at 8 a.m. Eastern just to watch this show for all of you to make sure this podcast got published right around kickoff of the NFL games. Because of all that, we're going to go through things rather expeditiously, but we will do it comprehensively as we always do right here on the Getting Over Wrestling podcast. AEW Championship was the main event. Hangman Page defending against Samoa Joe inside a steel cage. Joe bladed right away as if there was not enough blood throughout the rest of the show. Full Crimson Mask as the match progressed. Second time on the show, we had literal puddles of blood in the ring. Third time with blading. Fourth time with blood. I think there was a hard way earlier. Hangman used Coquina Clutch against him and then actively bit the gash on Joe's head. Tony Schiavone told us it was one of the most violent nights in AEW history, to which Excalibur replied, "You know, we just had blood and guts last week." Yeah, dudes, that's the effing problem.
I think you may have something here.
Katsuyori Shibata distracted decently early, climbing the cage with the title until Eddie Kingston, wearing a staff shirt, looked like a staff member, pulled him down. The referee got knocked out before Deadeye with no one to count. Powerhouse Hobbs then ripped the thick chain off the door, got taken out in the ring, only for Joe to take a header into an exposed turnbuckle, and then buckshot lariat, again for no count. Hook then ran into the ring, trying to wake the referee before grabbing the AEW title and drilling Hangman in the head, removing his jacket to reveal an op shirt. Somehow, I believe I had that on the Ultimate Preview. I literally said it like in a throwaway, thinking no way AEW would actually book it like this. And yet, Joe immediately picked up Hangman for a muscle buster on top of the title to become the new AEW champion. Let's get this out of the way. Anyone going with a B or higher for this match is insane, as far as I'm concerned at least. 2.75 stars C+, a 16-minute main event with an undeserved Crimson Mask, what I believe to be a weak-ass heel turn, establishing another heel faction that says they're pure, but just interferes in matches, which we already still have in the Death Riders. Big time yikes. Suddenly, after this was over, like 10 random dudes in Ops Dojo shirts hit the ring to celebrate with the actual faction. Now look, I have watched every episode of AEW television ever. I'm either going crazy and losing my mind, which is possible, but I do not recall anything called Ops Dojo ever existing, nor seeing shirts before, nor seeing any individuals before. So please correct me if I'm wrong about that, but this was random as hell to me. The lights then go out and they turn back on, only for the big screen to show a house burning with Swerve Strickland returning. He came out to a new theme that did bang as a song, but it didn't really have the sing-along factor or the chantability of Swerve When I Drive, which got him super over. Joe cleared the randos to the side. He wanted to provide Swerve an entryway toward Hangman, who was still dead from a single title shot on a muscle buster. Now, you'll remember, Swerve already got Hangman's back and was a babyface. So Joe thinking, and these guys suggesting, that he was going to come into the ring and pile on to Hangman, it didn't make any sense. Strickland punched one of the randos, then overpowered 8 men in the corner. Granted, looked massive, so more believable than it would have been a year ago. Beat them up one by one and then stood side by side with Paige, not looking at each other, but firmly focused on Joe. One of the dudes that he beat up looked like a Latin Shane Gillis, by the way. The visual of them together, that was really cool, kind of like a Mega Powers collide. But the segment was super weak, and it really did, honestly, feel like the end of a major TV show, not a pay-per-view. Taking the title off Paige 4 months after he ended a big bad in Jon Moxley, there's no other way to think about it than as an indictment of him as champion. I've seen this twisted as, wow, AEW gave us such a shocking, unpredictable title change, so it's okay. Really? How can it be that shocking if I literally broke it down on the Ultimate Preview as a possibility? Hook went heel, but he didn't turn on Kingston to do it. And having Hook be the reason Hangman lost the title when the dude has such a low ceiling, I'm talking about Hook, not Hangman, he hasn't improved an ounce in 5 years. It's an extremely poor decision. This was shorter than Paige's first title reign, which failed. And now 46-year-old Samoa Joe is champion again in this organization that screams about how much young talent they have that they're platforming. Do you remember the way Joe's title reign ended last time? Let's not overlook the repetitiveness of a cage being opened. We saw it twice last week, just for interference and such, and everyone loses their minds when WWE does something like this. AEW does it 3 times in 2 weeks. This definitely was a swerve, no pun intended, for my expectation that the Joe feud was an in-between to get Hangman to something meatier. But that's actually problematic, that this guy's 2 feuds as champion were Kyle Fletcher and Joe. Kyle Fletcher, who had another title. I mean, really? Standing next to each other, I got to tell you, I've said this many times before. It was even more apparent Saturday night. Swerve is way more of a main eventer than Hangman. It's blatantly obvious. And I presume he wins the championship from Joe at some point in early 2026. And I don't know, maybe we get babyface, Swerve, Hangman at All In or something like that. That was the saving grace of all of this for me. Swerve being back. Love him. But yeah, man, the rest of this, woof. Women's Championship, Chris Statlander defending against Mercedes Moné. This was the co-main event, which I appreciated. Unfortunately, the crowd was comparatively dead for it, given the 3 matches that were booked ahead. Stat was back to being an alien again. She literally entered from a spaceship. Looked great, actually, but the whole idea that she went back to being an alien, it's just so silly. Stat sold an arm early, so Moné worked it through the rest of the match, as one does. Dominated from there. She did 14 roll-through suplexes, which was pretty cool. Mercedes also did a sunset flip powerbomb of Chris into the corner. Stat finally regained some momentum with a rib breaker out of the corner. They exchanged seatbelt covers. Moné's shoulder wasn't even down. The referee still counted. Stat came back with a package pile driver for a rope break, only to eat Poison Rana and Meteora. They twice countered finishers before battling in the corner, with Stat pulling Moné out for Saturday Night Fever and the retention. I wouldn't even say there were like false finishes or anything. It was just like one finisher and end of the match, which is counter to the way AEW books pretty much all its men's matches. This went to expectation, as a number of results did Saturday, and that's not a bad thing. Stat needed to retain the title. She just beat Toni Storm twice. She has to be firmly established as champion. With those two now having been dispatched, it looks to me like Megan Bayne and I suppose Willow Nightingale, though they're both faces now, they're the remaining folks who can like legitimately take the title off of her. I guess you could throw Athena there as well, but she would need to drop her ROH strap first. As far as Mercedes goes, if this marks the start of her downfall, that could make sense, but we thought that was going to happen when she lost to Toni. To this point, though, she's gathering bullshit titles and losing whenever the spotlight shines the brightest. So this all just needs to make sense and entertain in the end, and it'll be okay. I presume it's going to be that Mercedes won't win the AEW Women's Championship until she loses the rest of the titles, because the AEW Women's title is so prestigious and so difficult to win, it requires one's full focus. It's also an effort, though, from AEW, and don't get this twisted, to say its title is better and more important than all the rest of the straps that Moné is holding combined. And that really flies in the face of them supposedly helping out all these other promotions, which is really just not happening. All in all, a strong match I thought could steal the show. It did not. It's right in line with the rest of the best bouts on the card, 4.25 stars and an A. Now, many of you may have watched AEW Full Gear live and paid $50 in the United States for it with HBO Max, or perhaps that was a barrier to entry for you to watch the program? Well, the good news is the Getting Over Wrestling podcast has a solution for you. That's because we log into NordVPN whenever we're watching Raw, SmackDown, NXT, or WWE Premium Live events on Netflix, or whenever we order an AEW pay-per-view. I am all in with NordVPN. It's easy to set up, a drastically better viewing experience with high-quality streams, commercial-free shows. All you have to do is sign up at nordvpn.com/gettingover, open the app, sign up for the pay-per-view with your international service of choice, and then watch the show. That's just what you can do with AEW. Obviously, like I said, with WWE, you can watch all the programs on Netflix, and you can even watch other sporting events not available in your home region. NordVPN allows you to get around online censorship or surveillance, protect your private data when web browsing, and avoid online threats. Plus, one NordVPN account can be used on 10 devices. To get the best discount from NordVPN, go to nordvpn.com/gettingover. Our link will give you 4 extra free months on the 2-year plan, and there's no risk with Nord's 30-day money-back guarantee. So improve your AEW viewing, save a little money, browse safer online, and get the best discount for the best VPN at nordvpn.com/gettingover. It is great to have NordVPN as the official singular sponsor of your boys right here at the Getting Over Wrestling podcast. Kyle O'Reilly against Jon Moxley, no holds barred. Mox stabbed O'Reilly in the head and liver with a fork, as one does. I believe Kyle still had to blade given the amount of color he got in the Crimson Mask. There were a variety of map-based submission counters across 3 separate sequences. It worked for the match, but it would be boring for me to go through all of them. O'Reilly stole the fork and started stabbing Mox in the head. He was already bleeding somehow, but I missed it. Got more color there. O'Reilly introduced a long chain. Then he stabbed Mox's hand while being choked, only eat a stomp and a Death Rider. He escaped a Kimura lock, countering into a chain-aided ankle lock grapevine. The chain didn't do anything extra there, but Mox submitted ultimately as he did previously. Mox stood and nodded at Kyle in a show of respect, but probably for his faction, a show of weakness after the bell. O'Reilly sold an injured arm, so as Mox was leaving, after giving this guy respect, he went back and briefly attacked him. Death Riders and Conglomeration came out, but no one did anything. The pools of blood in the ring and the overall gruesomeness of this, it was simply not necessary, given it was largely wrestled as a submission match, which is what the stipulation should have originally been, considering it was the entire point of the storyline leading into the bout. I truly believe it would have been more effective if they reduced the gore and focused on the wrestling, which is what AEW says they're all about. But I did enjoy it more than anything else through the first 2/3 of the card. Expertly wrestled by both guys. It was a wrestling match with violence, not violence portending itself as a wrestling match. There's a distinction there that gets lost sometimes in AEW, but these guys delivered. Mox took the L as he should given the story, even if I didn't think that was going to happen, and O'Reilly looked like a badass. The more interesting story to me would be O'Reilly joining Death Riders and jettisoning the losers in that group. But it seems more likely it's going to be Mox getting excommunicated, Pac taking over, and then they fall into becoming a mid-card faction, I suppose. 4.25 stars and an A. Again, I just wouldn't have done no holds barred here. It didn't need it. It was indulgence for the sake of indulgence. National Championship Casino Gauntlet. AEW literally stole the design for this title from the NWA World Television Championship, and I believe it's a similar design to what WWF used for its title that Hulk Hogan held, I want to say, like in the 80s at some point before Winged Eagle existed. We posted a picture on social media. It's ridiculous. Now, I'm going to assume Tony Khan is not dumb enough to just jack the design, but even if Billy Corgan agreed, holy shit, man, just come up with your own design. I've said this before. AEW tries so hard to act like it's continuing the history of professional wrestling. This company has absolutely nothing to do with NWA. And all that goes beyond this title being completely unnecessary in the first place, especially because your unified championship is in the process of being split up again into the international and continental championships. So it's just completely mind-numbing. Now, despite the cool booking of Bobby Lashley and Shelton Benjamin to start, the clock ticked down after like 30 to 60 seconds with Ricochet entering third. Ridiculous. We didn't even get to see them fight. GOA completely took the Hurt Syndicate guys out, destroying them ringside. The clock, of course, didn't tick again until everyone was cleared. Claudio Castagnoli, Daniel Garcia, Orange Cassidy, Wheeler Yuta were the next 4. Yawn. Kevin Knight, Roderick Strong, Mark Davis, and Mike Bailey were the next 4. Funny how that worked out with the teams and factions all being there together. At least Jet Speed wrestled each other for a bit. Matt Menard beat Garcia out of the match. Lashley and Benjamin returned. They murked everyone, leaving Ricochet to get his ass beat. The match finally picked up here, but it was over just as fast as it picked up, with Ricochet hitting Spirit Gun on Knight after a series of counters and finishers to win the title. Didn't mind the winner in Ricochet. He was the MVP of the match, needed some type of hardware to solidify his spot in AEW. But I got to tell all of you, this was the third straight Casino Gauntlet that just straight up failed to deliver. And the lineup of competitors boggled my mind. You're introducing what's supposed to be an important title. You claim to have an all-time roster, and you have Yuta, Garcia, Jet Speed, Menard, and Davis in this? Out of all the people that you could throw in here, it just, I don't understand what they could have returned people. They could have brought people in from other promotions. This is supposed to get defended internationally, even though they have the international title. I kept thinking about this match. Oh, I can't wait for like MJF or Jay White to show up, or just someone unexpected to join and actually put on like a serious effort. And it was just the dudes that we've seen in the mid card all year long. And then Ricochet wins. Like, I don't know. I thought this had a chance to be the match of the night. We have seen some incredible Casino Gauntlets. AEW is overusing the stipulation. And the last three matches, like I said, have all underdelivered. 3.5 stars and a B. TNT Championship, Kyle Fletcher against Mark Briscoe, no disqualification. Not a great decision to run this immediately after the no holds barred match. Like, put something between these, like 2 matches between these. Briscoe tope cannonballed himself into a leaning ladder early and he bladed. Fletcher threw him into another ladder similarly, then Fletcher bladed. The match had just started, both of them completely bleeding. Briscoe got pushed off the top rope through a table, then put through another in the ring before taking last ride. Briscoe then ate thumbtacks with a super kick, only to hit a fisherman suplex of Fletcher into them. Then Briscoe did a flip over neck breaker into some chairs ringside and a hanging froggy bow off a ladder into a table. That was the best spot of the entire match, but it was kind of convoluted. And these guys, they're just going spot for spot with no respite, wrestling in between, nothing like that. It was the opposite of Mox and O'Reilly, which I told you I loved. Fletcher stabbed Briscoe with a screwdriver, licked his blood, only to take a brainbuster into tacks. Then Fletcher stuck the screwdriver straight through the turnbuckle, so someone could get impaled on it. Luckily, that spot was not done. 2 more screwdrivers to the head and a brainbuster onto tacks for a false finish. Briscoe answered with a razor's edge through a barbed wire table and J-Driller to win the TNT Championship. People will give this match 5 stars. They will. It doesn't do it for me, especially because I was so desensitized to the violence running it immediately after No Holds Barred. If it stood out on its own, if there wasn't other violence on the show, if they didn't just do blood and guts last week, then maybe it would have played differently. But I mean, again, it was ridiculous. And I already said Mox and O'Reilly should have been a submission match. This match being wrestled this way proves that point even further. Briscoe won as anticipated. He badly needed to get strapped after contending and failing to win a singles title for so long in AEW. Obviously, the more intriguing story would have been Mark joining Don Callis' family, babyface, fish out of water situation, but this was the right decision for the match itself. Again, I acknowledge I'm probably going to be lower than others here, but I'm still going 4.25 stars and an A for the parts that were better than Mox and O'Reilly, and there were some. Much of it fell below that match, and again, they were juxtaposed against one another by being run back to back. This winds up ultimately on the same plane as a low A match. The work was solid. Congratulations to Briscoe. It was a real feel-good moment for him. Now, before we continue with the breakdown, allow the Silver King to remind you that here at Getting Over,
I happen to love the number 5.
And I hope you do as well. For $5 a month, $50 for the entire year, you can become an official Getting Overhead. Just visit buymeacoffee.com/gettingover. Sign up. You'll get bonus audio, the fastest 5 minutes in professional wrestling, instant reactions to every major show, and exclusive news analysis posts every week. Again, we are a single sponsor show, ad-free otherwise, completely free to you as a product. We would appreciate the financial support so we can keep this damn thing rolling. Buymeacoffee.com/gettingover. Kenny Omega and Jurassic Express fought the Young Bucks and Josh Alexander in a $1 million trios match. Omega moved like he was 50 plus in some stretches. In others, you saw flashes of his greatness. It just kind of hurt seeing him like that. Tagging disappeared late in the match as the faces hit countdown to extinction for a broken fall. Omega hit Alexander with one winged angel ringside after the Bucks accidentally superkicked him. Despite Omega delivering the offense, he was out ringside as the Bucks hit BTE trigger on Jungle Jack for the win. So I was surprised by that decision. Callis came in to celebrate, assuming they were part of the family, and they left with him, holding all 3 money bags. The family jobbers attacked Omega in the ring. They stopped at the top of the ramp with fans chanting, "You sold out," to a couple heels who sold out years ago. They didn't just sell out. They had sold out. They've been having sold out. They ultimately dropped the bags, which each contained $250,000 in them, kayfabe, running to the ring to save Omega. They could have just taken the bags with them to the ring. It's money they just won. It wasn't a Sophie's Choice situation. Commentary put it that way, but it wasn't. That was almost as nonsensical as the existence of the money match itself. If this was a check that was like going to Don Callis and he was going to pay them out, okay, but you're literally putting money bags ringside. It's cash. Possession is 9/10 of the law. The Bucks shook hands with Jurassic Express. They hugged it out with Omega. So the Elite are starting to come back together. I'm sure Hangman's next, especially given what happened in the main event. 3.25 stars B for the match. I'd go lower if I was asked to grade the story. You cannot build a friendship versus money story when there's no choice that actually needs to be made in the first place. Maybe if this was a one-off money match and the money was contractually tied to Callis, they could have done it. The Bucks have been involved in like 6 of these. There were 2 money matches on the show. If they didn't get this money, they could just ask Tony Khan, now that they're baby faces, to give them another money match next week. You know what I mean? By the way, if you're going to complain about the Bloodline story never ending, then the Elite stuff needs to be spoken about in the exact same breath. At least with the Bloodline, they introduce new characters. Now, we don't like MFT and we think the new Bloodline whole thing is a failure. Don't get it twisted. But at least they progressed the story. This is together, break apart, on and on and on. And in 2025, it's simply tired. Now, if Omega is going to do this and they're going to do a whole Elite run and then he's going to retire on the back end of it, I'll understand it, but there's no indication that that's coming soon. Tag team championships, Brodito fought FTR. Bandito failed on 121 plex, only to run across the other side of the ring, immediately land it. FTR basically no-sold his finisher, hit Shatter Machine immediately afterward. Real silly. Bandito kicked out of a pinning combination, only to get drilled in the head with a title by Cash Wheeler for an immediate cover and false finish. Must have added some padding to that mask, because apparently that was enough to take down Hangman. Brodito followed with Shatter Machine on Dax Harwood for a perfect 2.99 kickout. Best kickout of the entire show by Dax. FTR then hit Doomsday Device on Bandito, but he landed a top Cash, who didn't take any punishment, yet still kicked out at 2.9. The heels took out Brody King with an assisted spike pile driver on the apron, landing the same on Bandito for another 2.9. Bandito then gave them finger guns into a pair of flip birds, only to eat another Shatter Machine for the title change. I did not expect the straps to flip here, but as I explained on the Ultimate Preview, it made sense to do it if AEW is planning to move into the Edge and Christian championship run prior to Adam Copeland's retirement. And by making this move, that does seem like it's coming sooner than later. Bandito went out like a hero. That was important considering the way he's being platformed somewhat absurdly as, quote, wrestler of the year, though they could have just beaten King. And I don't know why they didn't just beat Brody. But it was more effective taking out Bandito the way they did for heels to beat the undersized, hero champion. Only had a couple issues with some of the selling and logic in the match, but it was easily the best part of the first 90 minutes of Full Gear. While FTR are not among the greatest tag teams of all time as they pretend to be, they are tremendous bell to bell. 4.25 stars and an A. Darby Allin fought Pac, first full match on the main card. Darby did a missile dropkick through Pac sitting in a steel chair. Pac came back with a powerful rope run lariat, moved into a brutalizer for a rope break. Then he ate shit, missing a black arrow with Darby moving him into a scorpion deathlock. So Pac called for a Wheeler Yuta distraction, and he took advantage of that by drilling Darby in the head with a bat for the 1-2-3. The referee delayed the third count, which was patently ridiculous and unfair considering he's a babyface ref and he's supposed to call it straight. He went 1, 2, hesitated, and then 3. And it wasn't a hesitation like a brief hesitation like you've seen before in championship matches. It was like a good half second, maybe even a full second of a delay. Beyond that being stupid, putting Pac over Darby with only interference from Wheeler was asinine. You have this dude take out Mox, then sacrifice himself in a massive bump at Blood and Guts, and you have him lose to a guy who has no momentum and has never won anything of substance outside of the trios titles since joining AEW. The third most important dude in the same faction that houses the leader Darby made say, "I quit," just beat him. Even if the idea is for Pac to take over the Death Riders and excommunicate Mox, there's a dozen other people he could have taken down, such as, Orange Cassidy, this was an atrocious booking decision. If this was LA Knight or someone similar in WWE losing a match like this, people would lose their effing minds. 3.75 stars, B+, well wrestled, kind of absurd. The timeless love bombs beat Babes of Wrath, Marina Shafir and Megan Payne, and Sisters of Sin. Obviously, there was a complete disappearance of tag rules here. It was basically a tornado match. Bane landed a great double German suplex, only to get pounced by Willow Nightingale, who cannonballed their heel duo off the apron. Storm and Harley Cameron actually had a decent pinning sequence that Tony won with a small package. TV match at best with a ridiculous concept where the Love Bombs now get to choose their own stipulation for a semifinal tournament match. It was nice they all got to be on the show, but it would have been better to book the final here. 3.25 stars and a B. I might actually be a little high on that. Maybe it was 3 and a B-. CMLL Trios Championship Sky Team retained over Kazuchika Okada, Konosuke Takeshita, and Hechicero. This began with 5 minutes left of TV time in the Tailgate Brawl, which the rest of these matches all aired on, just to be clear. But it was obvious AEW was planning to do the crossover to pay-per-view gimmick again. Okada didn't show up until the main card started, which I loved. Mystico basically didn't wrestle until that point either. Positive that Okada, Takeshita, and Mystico were on the main card, but also ridiculous that these titles were featured at all. Mystico submitted Hechicero as expected. Okada got some blind shots on Takeshita. They're continuing their interfaction feud. 3.25 stars and a B. There was a backstage segment during the main card in which Okada as champion, Takeshita and Fletcher all announced for the Continental Classic. Okada and Takeshita got into it a couple times. Bang Bang Gang beat acclaimed Big Bill and Brian Keith and the Outrunners in a $200,000 match. They won with a rollover on Anthony Bowens, who screamed at Max Caster for being outside the ring for too long. It's tough to explain how indie the Bang Bang Gang looks now, and it's crazy that Jay White's only been out 8 months. It feels like it's been 2 years at this point. That thought gave me hope he might return in the gauntlet. Alas. Big Boom, AJ, and QT Marshall beat Roppongi Vice. This reminded me that New Japan talent not being booked well in the United States, it's not exclusive to Jeff Cobb and Hikuleo. The Kid got shoved to the ground for the second straight pay-per-view appearance. And lastly, Hook and Eddie Kingston beat the Workhorsemen. Eddie literally wore street clothes, including a backwards hat, during the match. Never even saw this get announced. So that wraps up AEW Full Gear. A solid show, undoubtedly, but certainly not, the incredible all-time pay-per-view that everyone likes to claim every single AEW show is. In terms of our grades, let's start with our pre-show expectation grades on the Ultimate Preview. The Silver King said it was an 87 out of 100, a B+. That was my expectation coming in. Our pre-show grade on Twitter at Getting Overcast, it was actually rather disappointing from a contribution aspect. There were only 19 votes, despite us posting this nearly 90 minutes before the show began. It's the lowest voted PLE PPV poll ever. So it's really tough to put much stock in the results. It's not a representative sample, though you all did agree with me. 32% in the A range, 32% B+ to B-, 36% B- to C+. That averaged out to an 87.42, and 87 a B+. As far as the post-show grade, let's go with all of your listener grades again on Twitter at Getting Overcast. First, 23% A+ to A, 16% A- to B+, 31% B to B-, 30% C+ or lower. That averages out to an 86.4, an 86 or a B. So actually lower than the expectation going in. Of course, again, the pre-show grade was not that representative of a sample. For the Silver King, tough grade here. 4 legitimate A matches, none that really went to a higher plane. A few serious disappointments, too much unnecessary gore again, which really deflated the valuable hardcore moments that should have otherwise stood out on their own. The show was better overall than I expected coming in. And 3 title changes plus 4 champions crowned on one show. It did make it feel important. At the same time, this constant dialogue of every AEW pay-per-view is the best and amazing and incredible. It is such an eye roll. This did not fit any of those descriptors. It was a good show. And I'm actually above my expectation on it at an 89 out of 100, a B+. But when the main event Hook is literally Hook, and it's one of the worst bouts on the entire card, and you have the Casino Gauntlet, which become your signature match, for me, disappoint massively, and you run 2 bloodletting matches, directly back-to-back against one another, and then you have the same thing in the main event, and you have blood in another match on the card, it just kind of starts to ring hollow a little bit. So I'm at an 89 out of 100, a B+. It exceeded my expectations. That's positive. First time it's done that in a long time. That goes now to the question of, would you purchase this show? Would you have purchased this show? Is it worth the $50 that AEW and now HBO Max charge for the pay-per-view? At $50, I would say it's a legitimate question. I mean, if you are someone who really enjoys title changes and you like a couple of the unexpected moments, the return of Swerve Strickland, if he's your favorite, and you wanted, 3 title changes and another new champion crowned on the show, you could probably make a justification for the 50. I think more importantly, and perhaps better of a question, is whether this would have been worth the $30 that you could pay if you utilized NordVPN and watched it from Europe, which is what you could do with Triller. You can order AEW pay-per-views at a less expensive amount overseas by using nordvpn.com/gettingover. Yes, I do believe it was worth the $30. Not a question about that. 50, for me, I think you can sell the high seas. I think there's other options out there for you. The AEW pay-per-views that are truly worth the $50. Like, you see the cards, you know what the main events are. And Samoa Joe and Hangman Page inside a steel cage, some of the other bouts that were on the show kind of thrown together, the introduction of the national championship. For me, that was not appointment viewing, and it didn't necessarily surprise me that the show went the way it did. Again, a B+, cool. But if I'm paying $50, I want an A- or better show, and that's not what this was. So that wraps up our AEW Full Gear instant analysis. I appreciate everyone joining us on Sunday. I know it's later than we'd otherwise want, but it's football season, and especially when there's big games at night on a college football Saturday and AEW is running a pay-per-view head-to-head with it, the Silver King can only do what the Silver King can do. Vintage Chris Vanini, of course, will be along for the ride with our WWE Survivor Series War Games Ultimate Preview, which of course is coming next week, and our WWE Survivor Series War Games Instant Analysis coming next weekend. Between now and then, on Monday, none other than All Ego Ethan Page will be joining the Getting Over Wrestling podcast for the first time in an extremely special episode. So make sure you keep your ear holes open and make sure you subscribe to us at Getting Overcast on YouTube, where the video of that interview will be posted either before the show goes live or simultaneous to the show going live. Speaking of us on social media at Getting Overcast, be sure to follow on Twitter and Blue Sky, where you can get episode drops, news, analysis, highlights, and all that good stuff. You can send in questions and comments for the show, and you can vote in the pre- and post-show polls, as we mentioned a couple times on this program. Don't forget, here at Getting Over,
I happen to love the number 5.
and I hope you do as well. For $5 a month, $50 for the entire year, you can become an official Getting Overhead. Just visit buymeacoffee.com/gettingover. Sign up. You'll get bonus audio, the fastest 5 minutes in professional wrestling, instant reactions to every major show, and exclusive news analysis posts every week. Please support us. We're a single sponsor show with no other ads. We've been free since our start. buymeacoffee.com/gettingover. And lastly, please remember,
It's all about the 5.
so head over to Apple Podcasts and Spotify, leave a 5-star rating on Apple, take a little extra time, leave a 5-star written review. If you do, we will read it live right here on the show. Thank you all so much for listening to this edition of the Getting Over Wrestling podcast. It is time for the Silver King to sign off and leave you with just 3 final words. Bye for now.